Creativity is the sum of everything we absorb, interpret, and transform into something new. On this week's episode, we're going to be diving into the world of fashion, design, and creativity with a multi-hyphenate creative. What's up, people? Quite enough. It's another interesting episode, and I'm most excited because my guest for today is a session I've been looking forward to. He is a multi-hyphenate creative, like I said. He is so many things. He has lived, created in different continents, and he is joining us on this week's episode. We have the one, the only, Alexander Akandi. Hi, Alex.
Hello. Pleasure to be here.
It's nice to have you again.
Again, yes.
Okay, so before we get into our conversation for today, we'll be starting off with our What's New segment where we get to catch up on some of the things that happened during the weekend. And I think one of the major things that happened is the Cecil's concerts that he had at EFC on Valentine's Day. It was a concert that a lot of people got to talk about. And then he used the opportunity to announce his upcoming concerts, which will be coming up in April, his first live concert. So he spoke about that. And also I looked up some of the opinions or some of the statements that people made after the event, and it was good. So people were like, okay, we're looking forward to what he's going to give us. If he could do this at a smaller scale, let's see what he's going to, give us in April. Next up, we also had Salatiel, who celebrated his 10th year anniversary in the industry. He had the concert in Boya. So a lot of people said there were good feedbacks, and there were also feedbacks about artists not respecting the time they give. It was supposed to be at 7, and I think past 10, and a lot of things were not done already. And I think, to me, I'm somebody that actually likes that when you give me time, you respect the time. So it's a lot of things, but then there's the whole conversation about, it's hard to put up an event, so people should understand. But if every single time we have to keep on understanding, it's not going to make sense. I think Rema did something last year during his concert in Abuja where he told them, I'm going to come up at this time, and if you're not here at this time, it's your problem. And he respected that time. And when I think it was midnight, he closed the show, and people came afterward and they were like, okay, why would you close the show? And he said, I told you the time I was going to come, and I respected you, I respected myself, and I did that. And I think more people in the creative space need to be able to respect people's time and also what they do. Well, away from that, we are now back to you, Alex. Every time I get to sit down with you, it's really interesting because
In a good way or bad way?
in a good way.
Okay.
Let's put it
So
like that.
to clear it out, make sure.
It's in a good way because we get to have good conversations, and I love your mind because it's always ticking. There's always something interesting to hear from you. There's always something to learn from you, and I'm happy that we get to have this. But before we
Thank you.
get into that, I love to ruffle the feathers a bit. So we're going to play a little game. Are you ready?
All right. Let's
So
see.
it's this or that. You're
Okay.
going to pick, right?
Okay.
So minimalism or maximalism?
Minimalism.
Well, that's so obvious. Timeless pieces or trendy pieces?
Timeless. Obvious.
Obviously. Streetwear or high fashion?
I'm going to surprise you and say streetwear.
Can you say more about that?
I think the people misunderstand what streetwear is.
Yeah.
When you say streetwear, people automatically think like urban, like almost hip hop and that kind of style.
Yeah.
But streetwear is like, obviously you have hip hop, you have skate, you have grunge, you have goth, you have punk, you have so many like subcultures. You have like athleisure, like sportswear. There's so many subcultures. And because there's so many subcultures, there's more like scope for creativity in terms of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And over the past 10 years, we've seen high fashion copy streetwear. Because streetwear is us. It's everyday life. It's what you wear to work. It's what you wear to hang out with friends. It's what you wear going to the grocery store. It's everyday life. It's to me, it's real life, as opposed to like some of the elements of high fashion, which are more like costumes.
Yeah. Okay, so let's say, would you rather sketch by hand or digital design?
Hand. I have paper is there's a feeling you get with paper that's
Yeah,
I've tried every possible drawing tablet on the planet and no,
it doesn't give the
does
same
not the same
feel.
thing. Not the same thing at all.
So, would you rather design for a big brand or design for your brand?
Mm, that's a tricky question.
Okay.
Um, I've designed for other brands before, and I really enjoy that because often it's something that I would never design for myself. It's something I would never do for my brand. So it's fun to like explore
Explore, yeah.
other like aspects, have fun with like other aspects of it. But if it's in terms of providing my vision to a big brand, that would be tricky
Okay.
because like with a lot of these big brands, you have to kind of tone down your vision.
Yeah.
Very rarely do you have designers like who are allowed to do their own thing, right? Like if you look at, for example, J.W. Anderson at Loewe, he's allowed to do his own thing, and that's helped the brand. But then you look at someone like Sabato, who just left Gucci, wasn't allowed really to do his own thing. So it's like it's a
There are a
weird
lot
thing.
of
Yeah, yeah,
nuances to that.
yeah.
Okay. So, would you rather prefer working alone or with a team?
I prefer working with a team, but I've been forced by circumstance to
To
work
work
alone.
alone.
Because building a team is tricky, right? Especially in an environment where art isn't, we're not very big in art education in Cameroon, right? So it's very hard to find people who have the same kind of outlook, the same kind of drive, the same understanding, the same motivation. Um, so you have to kind of start out doing everything yourself, which is not necessarily a bad thing because you learn to master every like aspect of what you're doing. But definitely working with a team, it makes life a lot more easier.
Yeah,
You get
more
better
easier.
ideas, you get better feedback. You might think something is a great idea, and then you have someone in your team who's like, no, maybe we can do it this way.
Yeah.
So teamwork, definitely.
All right. I think I had fun giving those questions. There were some that were obvious and there were others that,
Not so
okay,
obvious.
not so obvious. Yeah. And others that were tricky. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. So I know that you grew up in a creative family. Most of your family is in the creative world. So was there ever a time where you thought, okay, creativity is not like by choice, but it's more like a calling for you?
Um, I don't want to say it's genetic because that is wrong, but I think we are all the product of our environment, right? So if you grow up in an environment where it's nurtured, then you're bound to fall into that. Obviously, the kids that are more creative than others, but I think as kids we're all creative. At some point, we lose our creativity, or we are encouraged to let go of it,
Yes,
right?
I think encouraged. Yeah.
In Cameroon, you're encouraged to let go of it. Um, but I grew up in an environment where like you were allowed to sort of explore, right? You were allowed to play around. You were allowed to try new things, whether it's like we're not limited, right? So in my family, you're not an athlete. No matter how great at sports you are, you can be an athlete and be a musician and be an artist and be great in school. You can do multiple things, right? No one's going to pigeonhole you into no, because you're good at football, you're a football player, kind of thing. And I think we do that a lot where, oh, this kid is really smart and has good grades in school, so he's our next engineer. When he likes to draw and maybe he might want to do something else, right? So I think I was just lucky to grow up in that environment, also in that era. And I think like early 90s in Lagos was art was taught in my school. Like we were doing plays, we did theater plays, we did art, we wrote short stories. There was short story competition and prizes. So it's an environment that kind of nurtured creatives, like early 90s, mid 90s.
Okay.
Nowadays, I don't see it so much. I don't see art being taught so much in schools, unfortunately.
It's mostly about you have to be this, you have to act a certain way, you have to, you have to work towards being a civil servant or waiting for a job,
Yeah,
or yeah, you just have to be sure of your
it's
path.
it's trying to narrow down human beings into like one facet of life. When human beings are multifaceted by nature, we have
Yes.
different interests, right? What you study might not be what you end up doing, right?
Yeah.
What you're studying, that might not be your innate skill, or it can help your innate skill. Like I studied business, I have my degrees in business, but that helps my creativity, right? If I had to drop the creativity to do only business, or if I had to drop business to do only creativity, I would be less of a whole, right? Because you're cutting off your arm and saying, no, I don't need my left arm. Because I'm right-handed, I don't need my left arm.
Doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense. Like we don't do that in life, right? But when it comes to like creativity and like career choices, we kind of cut off arms and legs and make people hop around on one foot.
Now, I remember you saying something where you said your mom says if you want to try something, if you're going to do something, try to be great at it.
Yeah.
How has that helped your approach while working?
It's been crucial to me, because what it does is it helped me develop an analytical mind, right? Being great involves work, it involves studying, it involves analysis, it involves trying to figure out, okay, who went before me, what did they do, how did they do it? And this is in any aspect of life, right? Whether it's sports, whether it's music, whether it's fashion, whatever it is, you have to have that curiosity, that analytical mind, and the openness to be wrong, right? I think, and it shows in the way I teach kids. Like I do, like, as you know, the mentorship thing and the workshops. I never tell them they're wrong. I want to understand why they did what they did, because there's a thought process behind it, right? And it's pushing people to think and analyze and study and understand what came before and understand how things work in order to be better. If you're not trying to be great, then why are you doing what you're doing? What's the purpose behind it?
I think I enjoy I love the analogy that you gave and also what your mom said, because when you mentioned it, like I've been thinking about it a lot, and I'm like, okay, that means for everything I have to do, I have to put my best foot forward. If not, there's no use doing it at all. Just don't do it.
Yeah.
Now, you decided at 13 that you wanted to, pursue your creativity and everything you wanted to do. But it's very interesting because at that age, not everybody gets to know or have an idea of some of the things that they want to do. So, can you take me down the memory lane of how Alex was at 13 or leading to 13? What were some of the things you were up to?
I actually thought I was going to be in like animation,
Okay.
comic books. Like I've been reading comic books. My dad is a bit of a nerd. My mom is a bit of a nerd as well. My mom draws. My mom was into like my parents were into like, that kind of like art and music and stuff like that. But I thought I was going to be in animation. I was obsessed with Japanese animation. I still am.
Yes.
But as a kid, I was obsessed with the more technical side of Japanese animation. Like I wasn't obsessed with the story and the colors and the action. I was trying to figure out how did they draw that? Like how did they do that type of thing. But then no animation schools in Cameroon. And I started, they say like a lot of designers, you start out by designing the things you never had as a kid. I was obsessed with sneakers as a kid. Like I was obsessed with sneakers. I didn't have a lot of sneakers, and the sneakers I wanted to have, you couldn't get. Being in Africa, being in Nigeria in the early 90s, you couldn't get this stuff. You could just see it on TV. So I started drawing that. Like I started sketching sneakers, drawing sneakers that already existed, but sneakers I'd like to have. And then I didn't really think of fashion as a career choice, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And then 16, 17 in boarding school, a friend of mine sent one of my sketches to a sports brand, like a global sports brand. And they actually replied
Yeah.
and asked to speak with me. So that was where I sort of figured, oh, this could be a thing. And then I started, again, trying to be great. I started like buying a lot of magazines on streetwear. So I was studying like Stussy and Supreme and Sean John and Crooks and Castles and all these like streetwear brands from the early 2000s and how they came to be, and learning that way.
Yeah.
And then I started designing clothing, I think my last year of high school in Kenya. And a lot of my classmates, like literally one of my classmates, Enoch, he was really pushing me, like, yo, this is really dope. Like, you should look into making this stuff. Again, didn't take it really seriously. To me, it was like a plan B, right?
Yeah.
And then I applied for a fashion school in Italy, and the director was like, why do you want to come here? My mind was like, I want to design. I want to learn to design. And he's like, you don't need to learn to design. You can design already. Like, the sketches you sent are really good. So go learn something else. Go learn the business side of how this all works. Ended up in business school in the UK. Again, was designing, but keeping it to myself. I wasn't sharing this stuff with people. And then my best friend, my family, my brother Corey, he ended up getting some of my designs made without telling me. Like a couple t-shirts made, and people started asking. People in my university started asking, like, "Oh, do you sell these? Where can I get it?" And then it started to become a business idea from that point of view. And then here I
Oh,
am.
yeah. Now, there's something you mentioned earlier that was coming to where you spoke about your friend who sent your designs to the global brand and they got back to you. So, did it validate something for you, or was it a sort of a challenge at that point?
It was confusing because for me, I like at that point in time, like there was nothing to validate my ability as a designer,
Yeah.
right? Like no one who is a designer had been like, "Oh, this is amazing." So to me, it was like, what are they seeing? Like, this isn't that great, right? But at the time, you don't understand the different elements of design, like the lifestyle elements, because the design they liked was to me very basic design, not one of my like more creative stuff. So it was confusing for one, but then two, it was also encouraging because it ended badly. They ended up using one of my designs without paying me. So all my friends were pissed off. My mom was really pissed off. I wasn't. Because to me, that was a validation I needed. Like, this brand thinks my design is good enough to steal. Oh, I must be good at this. Otherwise, they would not have to steal it. And that's where, like, to me, that was like the kicker that said, okay, this is something I'm good at.
Yeah. Now, you've lived in so many places, Nigeria, Cameroon, you went to boarding school in Kenya, went to school in UK. So how have all these cultural influences, shaped your creative identity as a whole?
Um, for one, it's led me to understand that we are more similar than we think we are. People have similar tastes. People have similar dreams in life, similar ambitions, regardless of where you are. But then creatively, like, it exposes you to different cultures, right? Different cultures, different viewpoints, different facets of how people view beauty at the end of the day, how people view design, history. I'm very big on history. So being in all these different cultures, you're learning all these different histories, you're learning all these different cultural elements. And that consciously or not plays a role in your design process at a certain point.
Right. Now, it's interesting to see that before we came on the show, we're having a conversation offset, and you've spoken about how you are in Cameroon, and sometimes people find it hard to believe that, okay, he's doing all his designs here and he's shipping it to the rest of the world and gets to see it. Was it a conscious decision that, okay, I wanted to create here for the global audience? Because I know you've mentioned how you didn't want your designs to appeal to, the Western appeal or how they thought about things. You
Yeah.
wanted to create it. You wanted to create something for Africa, made in Africa for the world. So how did you, take that decision that, okay, I want to stay back here?
So moving back was confusing to a lot of people. A lot of people were like, "Why would you leave the UK and come back to Cameroon?" I think for me, at the end of the day, it was about purpose. Like, what are you doing, and why are you doing it, and who is it impacting? Right? Me being in the UK, if I become a great designer in the UK, who does it impact? Right? Me doing the same thing here impacts a lot more people. Like, there's a lot more impact, right? Number one. Number two is about, again, go back to history and culture. I wanted to, my two choices were move to Nigeria or move to Cameroon. I wanted a part of me infused in what I do, right? So I wanted some elements of Cameroon or some elements of Nigeria infused into what I do. And those were the two main reasons why I decided to move back. And also the third reason is, for better or worse, there are things you can get done in Africa that you can't get done in Europe.
Things like.
In Europe, there's certain people, like, no matter, like, I would have a hard time meeting.
Okay.
You can meet those people here with 2 phone calls, right?
Right.
And that's the beauty of being in Africa, is the 6 degrees of separation becomes 1 degree of separation, right? You're literally 1 or 2 phone calls away from meeting someone that can help you with something, right? It's a lot different over there. And again, I've been using the phrase African born, world raised my whole life, because that's how I view myself. Like, I don't say to me, I was born in Africa because the key parts of my life, my childhood was between Nigeria, Cameroon, went to boarding school in Kenya while living in Kinshasa. So to me, African born, world raised. And that's how I approach my art as well. Like, it's my art is born in Africa, it's from Africa, but it's for the world, And some people might not agree with that, because it influences the kind of designs I do, influences the choice of fabrics and the way I view things, in terms of being able to make stuff that appeals not to everyone, but appeals to just human beings in general. I'm not targeting just Africans, right?
Yeah.
Because then if you target just Africans, you might be limiting off everyone else.
Yeah.
So I have a global approach to what I do.
Okay. So there's this question I've had in my mind that I want to ask particularly. Don't be scared. Don't be scared. Who is a fashion designer? Because there have been a lot of conversations about who a fashion designer. Everybody just wakes up today and puts fashion designer on their Instagram bio. Oh, I'm a fashion designer. Or on their store, there's haute couture. And I'm like, okay, let's have a professional come on board and tell us who a fashion designer is.
At the risk of a lot of people getting upset with me, we don't really understand the fashion industry in general, right? And a lot of people say, oh, Africa's different, we do things differently. No. There's a structure to this thing, right? Same thing is, you can't say as an engineer, Africa is different. There's a structure, there's rules to that world of engineering, right? There's different roles and different responsibilities. And I think in fashion, people don't really understand the industry and understand the different roles in the industry, right? The designer is the person that comes up with the idea, with the concept, is the creative, the person who, brings forth their creative vision. That's the designer's role. There are a lot of people that make clothes that think they're designers. And that's a very hard concept to understand, right? Because with design, there's an identity, right? There's a through line. People can look at your work and know it's you. People can dissect your work and understand your themes, understand like your views on art, just looking at your work, right?
Yeah.
People who look at my work know I'm a minimalist. You just look at it, okay, this is someone that's not like, whereas someone who makes clothes, they're not bothered by all of that, right? You're making clothes for people to wear. The problem is we seem to have elevated one above the other. People seem to view designers as better than people that make clothes. You're both making clothes at the end of the day. The difference is one has an identity, one has a certain like story, and the other you're just making clothes that are whether trendy, that people like to wear, and that's it. But even in the fashion world, you have pattern makers, right? You have seamstresses, you have drapers. They're different roles, right? The designer comes up with the design, comes up with the idea, the concept, you do the sketches and everything. Normally, in a structured industry, you will take that to a pattern maker. Designers don't have to be the ones to do the pattern. In Cameroon, we think designers have to do everything. Karl Lagerfeld, one of the greatest designers in the history of the world, did not know how to sew. He could barely draw. If you look at Karl Lagerfeld's sketches, they look like chicken scratches. Like, they're beautiful to me, but you wouldn't call them art. You wouldn't call them, like, it's not a detailed drawing, right? It's not a well executed fashion illustration. One of the greatest designers ever, because he could take that idea, give it to the people in the different roles, right? The pattern maker's going to look at that design and go, okay, here's how we make it. Here's how we cut the patterns to do this, right?
Yeah.
Then you take that to the tailor, the seamstress, who's going to now produce a sample, do the sizing, and then you take that to the factory and then it gets made. I think here we don't understand the process, right? So take for example the term haute couture. There's no haute couture in Cameroon. By the definition of the word, there's no haute couture in Cameroon. In the same way as there's no haute couture in Nigeria. Haute couture is a very specific term used to identify like clothes made in a very specific way. A lot of luxury brands aren't haute couture. The luxury brands, they're not haute couture. Haute couture is a very specific definition. And I think because we don't understand that there's a specific definition, like you have to have an atelier in Paris to be considered haute couture. So by definition, there's no Cameroonian based in Cameroon as haute couture. We have a Cameroonian in Paris, Iman Aissi, that's haute couture. But if you go look at the rules to be haute couture, no one in Cameroon, no one in Nigeria, no one in South Africa and all these countries is fulfilling those rules. But it looks nice. When you put it on a big sign in front of your thing, haute couture looks nice.
I think we love throwing around words.
Words we don't understand.
Words we don't understand. Even the word luxury. You see luxury experience. And I'm trying to find out, okay, what exactly is making this
Okay,
luxury experience?
you people call me here. I'm going to activate my Nigerian side and flip some tables. We view the word luxury as pricing.
Yeah.
Luxury has nothing to do with pricing. The pricing is a result of the luxury. Right? The pricing doesn't make it luxury. Mm-hmm. So if I take some cheap fabric, put together like a nice outfit and put it in nice packaging, right? Packaging looks beautiful. The name, logo, everything is A1. The fabric is cheap. But then I price it at like $3,000. Does that make it luxury? Why? Because the core essence of what I'm doing is cheap, right? I can't take a Toyota, change the logo, put a new brand of paint in it and call it a luxury car. It's not. No matter how much you sell it for, the core of it, like luxury is about every single step along the process, right? Again, we go back to process, right? How is your fabric made? How is the outfit put together? What's the quality of your fabric? What's the quality of your buttons? What's the quality of your zipper? What's the quality of every tiny little aspect in that garment, right? What's the process of making this garment? Is it hand dyed, right? Is it stone washed? Like there's so many things that go into it before you can call it luxury, right? Something being expensive does not make it luxury. I don't consider what I do luxury. Like I would never term it luxury because it's not. But again, we fall in love with words we don't understand.
It's fun to use.
It makes things sound nice. Let's be honest. It sounds luxury. See, like luxury hotel, and you're just like, it's a regular hotel. it's a standard hotel. But again, it makes things sound. We use luxury as branding instead of actually doing the branding. Yeah. The public should term your stuff luxury. You don't term it that yourself, right? The public are the ones to say, "Oh, this is luxury." You don't give yourself the title of luxury. The public, after buying your pieces, after wearing them, after trying them on, after seeing the quality, the packaging, the way you do your photo shoots, the way you do your TV adverts, all that put together, the way you do your pop-ups, your sales experiences, if you have a physical store, the way your store is laid out, all of that combines to the public saying that's a luxury product. Right. You can't just come on and give yourself that title.
Well, then we're good at that. Anyway, since we're still talking about African brands, you have mentioned that the weaknesses of African brands are the strengths of other industries, right? So what do you think African brands need to start doing differently, to get better and, improve with their brands?
I would say on the whole, having been around Africa, African brands are doing well. Like there are brands in Senegal that I am obsessed with. The brands in Kenya. Friend of mine's brand, Lila Bear, impeccable work, right? The problems with African brands have nothing to do with the brands itself. It has to do with the structure around the brands. So, right, it has to do with the business side of things, right? The biggest one being shipping. Like shipping from Africa is a nightmare. It's a
Yeah.
headache. It's expensive. It's hard. It's cumbersome. That's the biggest problem, right? The second biggest problem would be e-commerce. People having faith, right? Some of that has to do with the brands themselves, like you're selling stuff and you don't deliver. It's a problem.
What you ordered versus what you get.
Yes, we know that. But some of it also has to do with just platforms not being invested into the business side of things, right? A lot of people are like, oh, I'm investing in African creativity. We're putting money towards incubators for these creatives. Great. How do those creatives make money when you're gone? That's where you should be putting the money in. Are there deals with DHL and UPS and these delivery companies where, African brands have favorable deals that allow them to ship worldwide, right? Are you investing in that? Are you investing in a platform, right? There's a really great platform called Industry Africa, which is like a platform for luxury African fashion, what I'd consider luxury African fashion. There's not a lot of those. There's not a lot of shopping platforms where you can go to and find African brands, right? And be able to shop these brands. So I think the biggest problems are logistical and business wise. Creatively, a lot of brands from Senegal to Ivory Coast to Nigeria, Kenya, Ethiopia, South Africa, Morocco are doing incredible work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing I love with African brands is how they're able to, improve over time. That's people who are intentional. They try to, step up their game every single time. And I can't, I'm looking forward to, in the coming years, some of the amazing things that African brands are going to be doing. Talking about African brands, also, let's talk about your brand, Atelier Akandi too, right?
Alexander
Alexander
to
Alexander to
Akande.
Akandi. Every time I, go to the website, I love the website, by
Thank
the
you.
way. I wanted to say that. I love the website. I love how you are able to, be intentional about everything. Why did you choose the name? Why did you choose Alexander to Akandi? Let's start there.
Okay, we'll start with this is a lot of secrets are gonna be divulged today. Number one, the brand started when I was in university, completely different name. And then I tried to go through the process of like the legal process, right? Trademarking the name and everything. And it was like very expensive for a university student. And then I realized if I use my own legal name, it's my legal name. So you can't copy it's my name, it's not yours. Right? Same thing we see that with painters. I can't do a painting and write Picasso on it. Picasso's name it's Picasso, right? That's why most painters, all they need to do is sign their name. So that was my first motivation. The second thing is my grandfather, who I never met, is called Alexander. And a lot of people who meet me tell me I'm very similar to him, which is weird. They say I look like him, I act like him. It's very strange. But I wanted to honor that. Like family is very, very important to me. As my grandfather, my mom's side, but my Nigerian side, I also wanted to honor that as well. So the name was important, but the number 2 is the tricky part.
Okay.
My name is actually supposed to be pronounced in French. Alexander de Akandi.
Okay.
And de in French means 2, but it also means something else. It sounds like of.
That's tricky.
So my name actually means Alexander of Akandi.
Okay.
But Alexander de and de.
Okay.
De. Yeah.
Okay.
So that it was like a play on words for me.
Okay.
So it's Alexander, yeah, quite enough. so my name is actually Alexander of Akande.
Okay.
But the 2, I use the 2 because I'm the second Alexander. My grandfather was Alexander.
Yes, I was also thinking that
So
direction.
it's a play on honoring my grandfather, but at the same time honoring my family name and being Alexander of Akande. That was
pun intended.
that's where it came from.
Well, that's really interesting because every time I get to see your work, it's like, okay, why did he choose his name? But I know that everything you do is very, very intentional. Now, I know you're obsessed with Japanese animations and even their history, their storytelling.
For the simple reason was like Japan reminds me of what we could have been.
How so?
It's a country that is stubbornly protective of its culture and its history, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes a bit too much, but they're very protective of it, right? They value it, they cherish it, they cherish the historical sites, right? There's sites in Japan that have been around for thousands of years that are still there. You can still visit these places, right? But they're also one of the most modern countries in the world, the most forward-thinking countries in the world. So it shows that both can be true. We don't have to destroy our past to embrace the future. But we seem to be doing that in Africa. We seem obsessed with, okay, if we're going to develop, we have to destroy everything that came before us, right? A quick example is the Boya Mountain Hotel. When I found out that they had, I don't know, refurbished or whatever they did to it, even in just like protecting our history, we are not very intentional about it, right? The aspects of African pre-colonial African history that no one is aware of. We don't teach it in schools. We're not proud of it, right? So for me, my obsession with Japan is more like trying to copy that process of like, this is a country that's given us amazing inventions, technologically way more advanced than most countries in the world. But at the same time, they honor their festivals and their culture and their history. It's just an obsession with the ability of those two things to live together.
Right. That's really interesting because every time I see Japanese animes or animations, I get to see how they're always talking about their history
Yeah.
or they're so particular about their sites, right? Now, talking about representation, you are somebody who is particular about that, and you mentioned how Balting becoming the first black designer for Givenchy kind of did something to you that, okay, this is something that I can actually do. So I know that you are back here to, kind of show people that it's possible to create from anywhere. So what's one thing you want a young designer in Africa to see in your life and be like, okay, I think this is possible for me to do? What's one way you want to influence young designers?
Um, I think for me, the biggest thing is embracing the multifaceted nature of ourselves as human beings. Like I, I tend to tell people I do a lot. People ask me what I do. The easiest answer is I do a lot. But I grew up running track, playing basketball, playing football. I actually won a medal in javelin. Strange enough,
Javelin.
I know, shockingly.
Shockingly.
I won a medal in javelin. I used to draw. At the same time, I was really good in school. I got great grades, first, second, or third most of the time. But it's for me. I want people to understand that they don't have to limit themselves to one aspect of life. Right? You can do 20 different things. Right? I'm currently writing an animation project. I'm writing a TV show. Like I do a lot of things, but to me, it's normal, right? And I think understanding that this makes us who we are, right? So I want young designers across Cameroon and Africa, creatives, just creatives,
Creatives. Yeah.
to understand that you're not limited, right? You
Yeah.
shouldn't put yourself in the box. If there's an aspect of creativity you want to explore, do your research, do your studying, do what you have to do, but explore it, right? And it's also for me it's more so for the parents as well, because a lot of people will see the results now and be like, oh my god, you're doing so well, this is great. I had parents that encouraged me. I had parents that didn't limit me, right?
Yeah.
And I think African parents we do a great job of motivating our kids and pushing our kids, but we also do a really bad job of like guidance and direction, right? Because we have ideas of how they need to live their lives. And my mom says this all the time, a lot of families will probably block their own blessings, because you might have a kid who could have been the next great African designer, but you pushed him to study medicine because you don't understand design and you don't see it as like valuable or prestigious enough, right?
Yeah.
You might have had the next greatest architect in your family, like a legendary architect in your family, but you pushed him to become a lawyer, right? So I think it's understanding that our kids, like as human beings, we're multifaceted by nature, and just allowing people to explore explore all of that.
Explore and also thrive. Just
Thrive, like
yeah.
just, you know, dare to try new things, dare to explore, dare to try and to accept failure. Because I think as well, we view failure as the end. Like, I failed, it's over. Whereas failure is simply part of a process.
Yeah.
Failure is part of the learning curve, right? If something doesn't fail, then you don't know something is wrong. Failure shows us that there's an error, right? And now it's up to us to fix that error and move again, right? Like, if you make something and it breaks, okay, maybe it wasn't strong enough or it wasn't flexible enough. Now you know there's two things to fix: strength or flexibility. Okay, let's try strength. It breaks again. Okay, maybe let me try flexibility. Oh, it works. Great. Right? It's an entire process.
Yeah.
But we view failure as the end. And because of that, like, we don't often try new things. And that's just yeah.
And I think I really loved what you spoke about, how human beings are multifaceted, because just last week with our guests, we were talking about how people try, or in Africa, they try to box you. You have to be this. So when they ask you, what are you, you have to say, okay, I'm a lawyer, or you have to say, I am a TV presenter. It has
Yeah.
to be one thing. Say, don't confuse us.
Yeah.
And I think even the media kind of increases the pressure to do that, because I was talking to an artist where he spoke about how he was having an interview and he's so many things, and they told him, you have to tell us one. You don't confuse us. You have to tell us one thing we have to write about. And I think it's not meant to be that. I mean, there's so much in each of us that the world needs to hear. You have to explore. And there's so many things that we can do if we just let ourselves, fly and just, try it out. So let's come back to the conversation that I've been wanting to have. Addis Ababa.
Addis, my third home.
So how was your fashion show? How did it go?
It was great. It was really, really great.
Because I know you are a perfectionist, that's even when something is good,
No.
it's hard to accept it's
Yeah.
good. So
Normally, yes. Like last year, it's a side of me I've been trying to work on, in like immediately seeing the flaws, not embracing like, okay, this went well, right? As things are happening, I'm just like, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. Last year that was the case, right? This year I didn't have that. This year, for the first time in a long time, I did not think about what I could have done better after the show. Last year, immediately the show was done, like the second the last model walked in, my mind was already going to all the flaws, all the things I did wrong and how I could have fixed it. This year I didn't have that. I was incredibly nervous like 2 seconds before the show started. Like the whole day I was fine. The whole month, everything I was fine. The second the first model was about to walk out, I instantly got nervous. Which is strange. That often doesn't happen. But on the whole, it went really well. As usual, organization was A1. The organizers are absolutely incredible. What they're able to do, the fact that they've been doing this for 14 years now, the sponsors they can pull in, what this does for young designers. There's other young Ethiopian designers that I taught 3 years ago who appeared in Vogue, which was like, for me, that was the biggest thing, right?
Yeah.
The designers now that are, in Paris, that are showcasing in Berlin, in London, all from this one event. So for me, that was big. That's
Congratulations,
thank you,
by the
thank
way.
you so much.
And also coming back to still Vogue, you have been mentioned in Vogue US, Vogue Italia. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Guys, I went through the article, the one for last year and this year, and it was so beautiful to see. And also it felt like a sort of I wouldn't say validation, but it kind of said, okay, he's working in his purpose, to say that, okay, he's here and creating, and the world is getting to see the incredible things he's doing from here. And I just wanted to say, well done. Congratulations. You're doing an amazing job.
Thank you.
And I also saw the clips for the fashion show. I loved those pieces. And I
Thank
also
you
saw some
so
of the
much.
sketches you had made prior to,
Yeah.
the designs, and I loved it. So
Thank you.
congratulations and well done.
Thank you.
So you've been in the creative scene for a while in Cameroon, right? What would you want to do differently? Or what do you think can be done to kind of improve the scene? Yeah.
For one, I think we exist in isolation, and that really bothers me.
Okay.
It's one of the reasons why I decided to stay. At some point, I was going to move out of Cameroon. Like my bags were packed. Literally, my bags were packed. My bags were packed. Flight was booked. I was moving. I was moving to Ghana. 2020,
Oh.
right before COVID. Literally January, my flight was booked for February. COVID happened, lockdown, couldn't fly out. And then even when flights open again, I decided to stay. We exist in isolation, and I say that to mean everything we do in Cameroon is in isolation. Even in sports, like I'm big in the basketball community in Cameroon. You can be the best basketball player in Cameroon. No one outside of Cameroon knows that. Same thing with creativity. You can be one of the best creatives in Cameroon, photographer, designer, painter. No one outside of Cameroon knows who you are and what you do, because we don't invite people in. We don't do a good job of like exposing what we do, right? If you take, for example, the show we just did in Ethiopia, they've had a Vogue journalist come to the show and cover the show for the past couple of years.
Yeah.
Right? They have editors from different places. They have magazine editors. They have people that own e-commerce platforms. They have people that give that exposure, right? In Cameroon, we don't have that. Like even our fashion week, who's the magazine editor coming from New York to cover it? Who's the buyer coming in from Paris? Like where are the people? Take away Europe even and outside Africa. Where are the people from Africa coming in to cover it, right? Yeah. In Ethiopia, recently we had a journalist from Kenya, one of the, like, she's absolutely amazing, Connie came to cover the event. We had an Italian journalist, a lady from London who covers for Vogue Italia. We had someone who had been a contributor, Waridi, who also helped like guide my collection, who was also a contributor for Vogue Germany. That gives a lot of exposure, right? We exist in isolation. For me, that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest thing I would change, is create more events that expose the international world to Cameroonian creativity, and also invest in Cameroonian creatives and sending them out, right? Ethiopian creatives get sent to Germany, Berlin Fashion Week, London, like they get sent around, right? So they're able to showcase what they do, right? And it economically brings back to Ethiopia. Because, for example, Ethiopian cotton, they're woven fabrics. A lot of countries around the world, a lot of brands are buying that stuff. Because if we see this brand make this piece, where's this fabric from? From Cameroon? Handmade? Oh, let's go to Cameroon and check it out. So there's a return effect, right, on the country. Yes. So for me, that's the biggest thing I would change. The second thing would also be in terms of education. In terms of not just creativity, but general education, right? Creativity doesn't exist in a vacuum. Art imitates life. Yeah. So in order to get the best out of an artist, the artist themselves needs to be properly educated on history, on politics, on culture, on art, on music. It has to be a holistic education, not just academics and get good grades in science and go be an engineer. Like, it's understanding. Tinker Hatfield, for example, one of the greatest sneaker designers, the greatest sneaker designer ever, is an architect. Who would have known? Designed the Air Max, designed most of Michael Jordan's sneakers. He's an architect. But it's Virgil Abloh was architect. Yeah. Also DJ, also designer. Like, so for me, it's just two things: exposure and education. Two biggest things.
Okay, that's really interesting. And I love how you're able to explain why you want to do those things, because sometimes we feel or we believe our own hype, if I would say. It's like we are satisfied with the level we put or the pedestal we put ourselves, and like, okay, no, we are good enough here. We validate ourselves amongst ourselves. It's enough. I mean, do you know that I was on this interview? Like, no, I'm good. But I think we need to do a lot more when it comes to exposure, and also, reaching for the global stages.
It's also, sorry to cut you, but it's also embracing the unknown. Right? Okay. You might be the best designer in Cameroon, and then you fly to Senegal, and everyone in Senegal is like, who are you? You have to embrace that. Yeah. Like, you have to put your ego to the side and understand that, like, in order for you to grow, there's a saying I heard, I can't remember who told me this. Goldfish are only small when they're kept in a small environment.
Yes. Yes.
If you see goldfish in the wild, they're massive. Goldfish grow based on the environment they're kept in. As an artist, you can't grow if your environment is small, right? So you need to put yourself in uncomfortable places. You need to put yourself in, like, remember my first international show, 2017, Miami. Got there and I was like, oh, I'm sure my collection is great. I saw other people's work and I was like, oh, shit. Like, okay, my collection is good, but I made mistakes here. My color choice, my this. You start seeing and learning from other people, right?
Absolutely.
Having conversations with people. People are giving advice. Okay, next time do this, next time do that. And that's how you're able to grow. So it's also embracing the fear, embracing the danger, understanding that, okay, I'm the best in Cameroon, quote unquote, but there's people in Nigeria, there's people in South Africa, people in Kenya, people all around the world. I need to put myself in that environment, in that uncomfortable environment, make myself uncomfortable to actually grow.
Absolutely. And I love the analogy you made about the goldfish, because I've heard it somewhere too, that it said it's based on your environment. And if we're not able to, put ourselves in those situations, we will not grow. We'll keep on deceiving ourselves and believing our own hype.
It's the shark theory. Sharks have to keep swimming, otherwise they drown.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, you have to be like a shark. Keep moving. Okay. Yeah. You did this, what's next? You did this, what's next? Yeah. For me, one of the biggest things with the Vogue mention, and I always clarify and say to mention, because in articles, I'm not on the level for Vogue article yet. We'll get there. But being mentioned in Vogue is a big deal. It's Vogue, right? Yeah. And for me, being mentioned, if I was based in London and being mentioned being based here, two different things, right? If I was based in England, it would not have the same impact. Not, because Cameroonians would be like, oh yeah, he's mentioned in Vogue, but he lives there. He has a better chance of meeting Vogue people, of meeting those people, right? Being based here, making myself here, everything is made in Cameroon, right? Doing a show in Africa, not in Europe, and making it to Vogue, for me, is more impactful. Because a designer here or creative in Cameroon is going to look at that and go, okay, that guy lives here. I've seen him up, like, he lives here, but he made it to Vogue, so that's going to encourage people to feel like they can do it as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. And for me, that impact is massive.
Absolutely.
It's important.
So let's play a little game. Like I said, we have to keep you on your toes. So I'm going to read a sentence. You're going to complete it without thinking too much.
Okay.
All right. Are you ready?
Yes.
The first thing I ever designed was
a dress.
If I wasn't a designer, I'll be
animator.
One fashion trend I'll never follow is.
Oh, there are a lot of those. A lot of those. The baggage, the oversized, massive trousers.
Okay. The best advice I ever received was.
Keep moving.
I like that. My dream collaboration would be.
There are a lot of those. Most of my dream collaborations are my friends. Nice. One is my designer I met in Ethiopia in 2022. My first time going to Addis, Lila Bear, Ria. I would love to work with her. Two is my cousin, Dami. We're planning something. I really want to do some stuff with him. But outside of those two, in terms of like maybe a global brand or something big, two. Yoji Yamamoto and Andrea Yama.
Ooh. No, I love Andrea Yama. I am looking forward to that.
I already have some like sportswear designs for Andrea Yama. I've sketched it. I like to manifest my dreams. So I've sketched like ideas for potential collaboration with Andrea Yama.
No,
if it ever happens.
No, let's not talk.
I'm on a healthily obsessed with her.
It happens.
Yeah, I'm on a healthily obsessed with Andrea Yama and her designs. So
I love their designs too. So collab with Alexander II Akandi. Good one. So if I could have dinner with any creative, dead or alive, it will be
Salvador Dali.
Why is that?
He influenced the creative world in a lot of ways, and people don't really give him credit for it. From his paintings, you could see that this guy was an absolute creative genius. And for me, it was just like how his mind worked. Like just a conversation around art for me with him would be like, it would open certain doors in my mind that are not open yet.
Okay. The one thing people don't know about me is,
That's a lot.
let's go with one.
Personal or professional? Let's narrow it down.
Personal.
Personal. Some people know this. I'm a massive introvert. I like to be home. I love to be home. What's another thing? I'm surprisingly very athletic. I don't look it. Most people get very surprised when they watch me play sports. That's another thing most people don't know.
I think you play basketball.
Like I grew up playing basketball, football. I ran 200 meters. I have a javelin medal.
It's the javelin I was coming
Everyone's
to.
confused by the javelin.
Javelin.
I'm a track. If you run track and you have good speed, javelin it helps. Plus, our javelin guy was injured, and my coach was like, "Okay, you have 3 weeks to do this," and I won a medal.
Oh, well done. So in 5 years, I see myself
being able to provide an outlet for Cameroonian creatives, for young Cameroonian creatives, whether it's through internships working with me, whether it's through the connections I have with other designers around Africa, whether it's through platforms allowing them to be able to showcase their work. My life goal is to have a creative center where young creatives can come in for free and have access to cameras, studio equipment, computer software, like just have access to this stuff. Being able to just come in during the holidays and for 3 months just explore without having to pay anything.
I think we're going to have this conversation or continue this conversation off camera.
That's my last. That would make me a happy person.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming to the show. I mean,
it was an absolute pleasure.
Your life or your career is a masterclass on, breaking boundaries, staying authentic, and
stubbornness.
Also
a healthy degree of being stubborn.
Stubborn
helps.
Absolutely.
And people tell you should be doing this. It's you have to be kind of stubborn, and not listen to them.
Absolutely. So, like I said, your life is a masterclass of breaking boundaries, a healthy dose of stubbornness, and also using art to make a statement. And I'm so grateful that you took out time to share from a wealth of knowledge with us. It was really fun. Like I said, every time we get to have a conversation, it's usually fun.
Just to say, I know we don't have a fixed date yet, but the collection I showcased in Ethiopia will be launching in Cameroon next month.
Yeah.
Tentatively, we're looking at the 26th of March.
Okay.
So more details will be coming out soon. It'll be quite interesting with what I'm planning to do and the few things I'm planning to add. It should be quite interesting.
Okay.
Everyone is invited. You're invited.
We're keeping our fingers crossed. I mean, when the date is sure, we'll get to talk about it on the show, and let people know and come and have an experience of your brand and also you as a person in general. Thank you so much for coming. I really had a lot of fun.
Thank you.
And I hope that a lot of people are going to, even with the tables that were we're ruffled, the feathers that were ruffled, I hope you're still going to enjoy have takeaways. And also for young creatives who are watching this, I hope they're going to be able to learn from what you're doing and also take away that whole aspect of representation, seeing someone like you doing this, meaning you have a hope of doing. And I think that's like one of the essence of the show is being able to tell people stories so that it can be able to like this saying that when you shine your light, you give others permission to shine there. So that's one of the things we are doing here, and I'm happy that you were able to do that with us.
Thank you.
So before we let you go, we have a little bag there. So there's a question that wasn't set by me, so you're going to pick the question and answer.
This should be interesting. Okay. We've answered this. What is something people will be surprised to find out about you?
Okay, I think we answered for personal. Let's go professional.
Um, I actively seek criticism. A bit too much sometimes, but I actively seek critique. I actively seek um, not just constructive critique, but like intelligent, well thought out critique, because
Constructive.
that is the only way you get better, right? A lot of people think I'm very stuck in my ways and I have a clear idea of exactly what I want. But I like to discuss with people who have, I'm trying not to offend anyone, like intelligent viewpoints about creativity in general, right? About the world in general, because you learn. People who are able to look at something, remove themselves and their personal preference from the equation and analyze that thing for what it is, right? Not analyze my work based on what you like and what you don't like, but analyze my work as its own thing in its own universe, right? Those are the conversations I love to have. I've had, the night before I came back from Addis, I had a 3-hour conversation with an incredible creative who helped me a lot while I was in Addis on just my work and my brand. Like a whole 3-hour, conversation. And it was mostly critique. Very, very few of it was, oh, you're so amazing. It was, you could have done this better. You need to look at this, you need to do that. And for me, I embrace those kinds of conversations because after that, through the fire, through the difficult moments, you get better. And I think just to build off what you said previously, I say this all the time and I genuinely mean it. No one is coming to Cameroon looking for me. There's a reason I still have to go out to get into Vogue. Vogue is not coming here looking for me. If there were 50 of me, Vogue would come. So for me, my biggest thing is like, we need more, right? One person cannot uphold the Cameroonian creative industry. No. No one is big enough. No one is important enough. I don't care what you people think about your egos. I really don't care. But we need collectively to be strong, right? People pay attention to Nigerian fashion because collectively you can list 20 Nigerian designers who are amazing, right? Who know how to sell, who have beautiful branding, marketing, photo shoots, everything is beautiful. You can list 20 Senegalese designers doing the same thing. You can list 20 South Africans doing the same thing. They're getting the attention because they have the numbers. So I think for Cameroon, we need to strip our ego, like really strip it away from the bone and understand that we need to work together. Because if we don't get stronger as a collective, the world will never pay attention to us. And if the world never pays attention to us, at some point, the art doesn't have an outlet. There's no avenue for it. It just stays here and dies here. So for me, that's a big thing. It's just empowering everyone. So, if everyone is doing well, then everyone's doing well.
Well, thank you once again for sharing that. Well, on what's next, he has mentioned that he will be having a show or an experience that will tell you more when the time is right. And also, one of the things we are looking forward to, like I mentioned earlier, is Cisol's first live concert that will be happening at Palais de Congrès. So we're keeping our fingers crossed. There's a lot of things that will be happening this year, creative wise. I've seen people already, dropping hints here and there, but then we'll be here to enjoy all of that when that comes. But once again, thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. Like we had the amazing Alexander, on the show. And it was a very interesting one, like I keep repeating. So I hope that every creative that is listening to this will be able to, come out, live to our highest peak of self-expression, stay authentic, and also, build a community and grow stronger together. I mean, you can't do it alone. If you want to go fast, you can do it alone. But when we want to go far, want to create a ripple effect of impact, we have to do it all together. So catch you on the next episode of Quite Enough. I remain your host, the voice Jemma. And remember, there is something inside of you that the world needs to hear. Catch you next week.